Call to order the February 5th meeting of the Cary Town Council. And at this time, I'll recognize Mayor Pro Tem Bush, who will lead our ceremonial opening.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Before we begin tonight's meeting, I wanted to take a moment to recognize and thank the large number of remarkable teams that have worked tirelessly behind the scenes over the past few weeks. Our public works, our public safety, our communications professionals, they really are the heartbeat of this town. And through snow and ice and freezing temperatures, you kept Cary running. You kept us connected and you kept us safe. Now the numbers tell an extraordinary story, and I thought I would share it with all of our residents, that over 20 days, our teams logged more than 41,500 miles. That's 1.5 times around the world, and spread over 1,100 tons of salt using 75 plows, 28 spreaders, and 200 steel blades. I actually got to see one of those blades broken. They prepared 90,000 gallons of brine, and if you want to know how much that is about 6 standard-sized backyard pools worth of brine. And they worked 18,500 hours across 16 separate 12-hour shifts. There were over 400 staff members from every department, and the communications team kept the public informed through 225 updates on all types of social media, from Facebook, Nextdoor, Instagram, X, Blue Sky, and the Cary Collects app. These netted over 2 million impressions by people watching live about what was going on in Cary. It was an incredibly helpful and informational and safe set of reminders that were provided to us, and there were live interviews by many of our staff, and there were over 10,000 views on our live traffic cameras. But thanks to everyone's efforts and the community's caution, we only saw a small number of weather-related emergencies. We had over those 20 days, we had about 30 calls to 311 and just a dozen really true emergencies. Among those were 8 traffic accidents, 2 with injuries, and 3 accidents that involved stranded motorists. One call, however, stands out, though, as a very powerful reminder of both the human courage and the importance of safety. During the second storm, a young child ventured out into a frozen pond that gave way beneath him, but fortunately, a nearby, I will say, hero saw what happened and ran to help, and together they were actually rescued by our incredible team from Fire Station 5, even though that they ended up in the frozen water for more than 5 minutes. It reminds us that no ice is safe ice, and every second counts in an emergency. And though sadly, there was another event where we learned of the loss of a family pet, a dog who fell through the ice at another neighborhood pond. And though this one occurred outside of our active snow response, it is a reminder for all of us that we need to stay vigilant. We need to check on our neighbors and be mindful that this winter season is still lingering on and on. So to every member of the town staff who answered the call of duty, and to every resident who helped, whether you helped a neighbor, whether you stayed at home like you were supposed to, you all really showed resilience, professionalism, and heart, and you really are the true spirit of Cary. So with that, if you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you for all that data. I love data.
I know you do.
You should post this and we'll share.
Yes.
I will.
Okay, we've received a request to include a proclamation presentation in celebration of Ramadan. Is there a motion to amend the agenda accordingly?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We're now at recognitions, reports, and presentations. And we have Troop 213 working on their citizenship in Community Badge, and if you would stand and be recognized, please. Thank you. We appreciate you being here and for your interest in local government. All right, our first proclamation this evening is the Lunar New Year Proclamation. And now I invite Councilmember Huang to join her invited guest at the podium for the presentation.
Yeah, so I just changed to wear Chinese traditional clothing to invite Bing, Mr. Li, to join me over there. Before I read this proclamation, I would love to recognize the North Carolina Chinese American Society members over there. Could you please stand up? Say. We're going to celebrate Lunar New Year tomorrow, and they prepare the red envelope for everyone. So this is everyone. Yeah. So every one of us get an envelope, and there's a golden chocolate inside. So, and also to the audience, if you can just grab a red envelope after the meeting. Okay, please stay. Thank you. And you stand here. Okay. Celebrating the Lunar New Year in Cary, North Carolina. Whereas Cary celebrates the rich cultural history and diversity of our citizens through recognizing important and significant holidays, including the Lunar New Year. Whereas the Lunar New Year, also known as the Spring Festival, is a memorable holiday filled with joy, festival traditions, family reunions, Thanksgiving, and reflection. It's the most significant celebration for many communities around the world. Whereas the Lunar New Year, also known as the Spring Festival, marks the transition from one zodiac animal to the next, with February 16 marking the end of the year of the snake, and the February 17 marking the beginning of the year of the horse. Whereas in Chinese culture, the horse is a symbol of strength, vitality, perseverance, and freedom, representing energy, resilience, optimism, and the spirit of progress and determination. Whereas MUVNC Foundation, North Carolina Asian Americans Alliance, and the North Carolina Chinese American Society host vibrant celebrations and cultural traditions for local communities to come together to appreciate the heritage of the Lunar New Year. Now, therefore, I, Bella Huang, council member of Cary, North Carolina, on behalf of the Cary Mayor and Council, wish good fortune, health, and happiness to all those who celebrate this joyous new year. Proclaim this 5th day of February 2026.
Thank you so much. And happy Lunar New Year.
Happy Lunar New Year.
Our second proclamation is the Ramadan Proclamation, and I will now invite Councilmember Bonsall to join Mr. Williams at the podium for the presentation.
As we gather today, I want to take a moment to recognize the holy month of Ramadan, a time observed by Muslims around the world as a period of fasting, reflection, prayer, and service. Ramadan is a reminder of the values we all share: compassion, gratitude, self-discipline, and care for our neighbors. It is also a time that brings families and communities together in the spirit of generosity and understanding. With that, it is my honor today to read this proclamation recognizing Ramadan and its significance in our community. Whereas Ramadan is the 9th month of the Islamic lunar calendar and is considered one of the holiest months for over 1.9 billion Muslims worldwide, including members of the Muslim community in Cary. And whereas Ramadan is a time of spiritual reflection, self-discipline, and acts of kindness, during which Muslims fast from dawn to sunset, abstaining from food, drink, and other physical needs to cultivate gratitude, empathy, and connection with others. And whereas the practice of Ramadan emphasizes the values of compassion, generosity, and community, with Muslims coming together to break their fast at sunset during iftar and uniting in worship and prayers. And whereas Ramadan fosters greater understanding and mutual respect among people of all faiths and cultural backgrounds, contributing to the rich diversity and inclusiveness that defines Cary. And whereas Cary values the contributions of the Muslim community to our shared prosperity, cultural vibrancy, and civic life, recognizing that our diversity is a strength. Now, therefore, I, Sarika Bansal, Cary Council member, on behalf of our Mayor and Cary Council, do hereby recognize February 17th through March 19, 2026 as Ramadan in Cary, North Carolina, and encourage citizens to learn more about this important month, join in building bridges of understanding across all faiths, and appreciate the values of reflection, kindness, and unity embodied in Ramadan. Proclaim this 5th day of February 2026.
So good evening. Thank you so much to the mayor, the council members, and Council Member Bansal for your leadership. This means a lot to the Muslim community as we continue to move forward to try to unite as a human family. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move into the business portion of our meeting now, and we're at our next item, which is the 2025 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, independent audit results, and the presentation of the annual financial results update. So at this time, I'm going to recognize Interim Town Manager Russ Overton to introduce the item.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a slide clicker for me. Thank you. All right, I thought it would be good to introduce kind of where we're at as we receive the findings from our audit tonight, is that there are 4 different investigations or inquiries that are going on during this transitional time. As everyone knows, the first one would be the North Carolina Office of the State Auditor is investigating alleged cases of fraud, waste, and abuse of taxpayer dollars, happening independent of anything we are doing. One thing that the council has done is hired Womble Bond Dickinson to examine procurement card usage, reimbursement expenditures of the town funds by the former town manager, examination of the former town manager's reporting of town finances, and review a work environment created by the former town manager. And we expect that report in the coming months. The district attorney has also called for an investigation by the North Carolina SBI to perform a criminal investigation. And tonight, to highlight what you're receiving, is Cherry Beckert is Cary's external independent auditor that reviews financial statements for financial reporting and compliance related to federal funds and internal controls for the fiscal year 2025. I guess it's good to point out that they are looking back at the last fiscal year, while the state auditor, Womble Bond, and anything else are looking at a multi-year effort. So earlier today, I had the privilege of meeting Leanne Waters with Cherry Beckert, and she will be up later to talk about what our external independent auditor's review has been. I think this slide's very important because all of this can be kind of confusing, especially when you're hearing of what our independent external auditor does. So I wanted to take a moment to walk through the slide of how you get to an annual audit. Staff, at the close of a fiscal year, staff creates draft financial statements. They then give those to the auditor to come in and audit those statements. The auditor then shares their opinion with the town council, and that'll be tonight. And then that information goes into something called the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, or the ACFR, that is ultimately shared with the public. And I believe currently it will go online, where there are also, I believe, the prior 6 years of that document currently online as well. So also earlier tonight, our finance director, Kimberly Branch, walked through the draft ACFR, and then after you receive your report tonight, and as they finalize that work, the auditor's opinion will be added to that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Town Manager Dana Widmar for a few opening statements as well.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm pleased to be here tonight as part of a team sharing important information regarding Cary's fiscal year 2025 independent external audit and year-end financial statements. Collectively, this information reports on financial accountability and performance. Please note, this information is specifically for fiscal year 25 only. So that was July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025. I'll go straight to the headline. The auditor anticipates issuing an unmodified opinion, often referred to as clean, which is the highest possible designation. And the financial results for the year include very good news. So I'd like to share some things that can help explain the contradiction between tonight's report and the recent negative attention on Cary. To adequately explain the positive financial results you're about to hear, we need to go back to the spring of 2024, when finance staff raised concerns about fiscal year 24 performance. In response to those concerns, actions were taken by staff and council in the spring of 2024 to ensure that Cary's performance met the fund balance policy that year. Then, in fiscal year 25, Cary staff closely monitored financial performance, including revenue growth and net position, while also taking comprehensive action on capital projects due to inflationary pressures. Tonight's financial results reflect the many actions taken towards the end of fiscal year 24 and throughout fiscal year 25. And of note, from the perspective of the auditor, Cary's finance department has processed countless transactions throughout the year in a new financial system that Cherry Beckert is able to obtain audit evidence supporting the issuance of this unmodified opinion. What these results do not answer are the many questions raised by the media and our citizens. So as staff continues to respond to the many inquiries, we are learning something very simple. Cary's former town manager shared incomplete information and/or different information with different people. For example, when staff raised concerns related to performance in the spring of 2024, we were given the impression that you, council, were told everything. We now know that you did not know the full truth because you were not told. This key contradiction of incomplete information provided by the former town manager contradicts our value of transparency and consequently undermines trust. That reality, our reality, has been very difficult. And as you highlighted, Mayor, very sad. But it led council to do the hard work they were elected to do, that you were elected to do, which involved a change in leadership. It also included a call in the fall of 2025 from the mayor to Cary's independent auditor, Cary Beckert, where he shared his concerns. From that and follow-up calls with staff, the independent auditor's findings and recommendations include a material weakness relative to the controls environment due to the tone at the top from the former town manager. So tonight, Leanne Waters from Cary Beckert will share more specifically about the work they were contracted to do for Cary, how it is similar and different from the work that they do in other communities, and then she will provide the results of this year's audit. In addition to the anticipated clean, unmodified opinion, Cary Beckert will also provide recommended best practices in response to Mayor Weinbrecht's and staff's expressed concerns. Essentially, Cary did a great job, did great work in fiscal year 2025, and there are growth opportunities. And we welcome that. Leanne will then be available for any questions that you may have. Following that, our finance director, Kimberly Branch, will share with you the favorable fiscal year 25 financial results, which includes the general fund balance at an amount that well exceeds policy and puts us in great shape to finish the current fiscal year 2026. Kimberly will also be available to answer your questions. Ms. Waters.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you all for giving me time on your agenda here tonight to discuss the results of the 2025 audit. Excuse me. I'm going to go through the agenda that we have here on the first slide, and I will refer you to slide number 13. They're a little different from my prepared slides because they go along with your packet. But this is your client service team this year. I am the engagement director. I will be the individual who is responsible for signing the audit on behalf of Cary Beckert. This was my first year working with the town of Cary in this role. Dan Goggerty is our second reviewer. He is someone who is independent of our audit team, who has not worked on the audit, but who reviews it at another level to ensure that our work conforms to all standards, that your report is prepared in compliance with GAAP, and that we have provided or applied the proper procedures throughout the conduct of the audit. Dan has been part of our audit team for 3 years. Jennifer Moran served as the senior manager. She worked closely with the staff here during the conduct of the audit. Jen has also been with the audit team here at Cary for 3 years. And we had a new senior associate, Chandler Ward, who worked on the audit this year, and new key staff, Cody Russ. This is something that we try to do on a regular basis, is rotate team members in and out of your audit team so that we preserve our independence. It's one of our ethical standards that we have to apply throughout the conduct of our engagement, is to remain independent. We try to balance that with some team members who are more experienced so that your folks aren't training us on Cary every year. So moving on to the results of the audit, one thing that, before I really get into the prepared comments on the slide, I want to let you know that this audit is not performed as part of an investigation of any means. Our audit has a completely different purpose than what those investigative procedures are having, or what the inquiries, you might call them. The purpose of our audit is to express an opinion on the financial statements as a whole, and to be able to provide assurance that those financial statements are materially correct, meaning that they do not have what we call a material error in those financial statements that, if it were corrected, would change the decision that a financial statement user makes based on those financial statements. And so to do this, we spend time, we make inquiries. Your mayor participated in one of those inquiries. We talk to members of management, members of staff. We gain an understanding of your processes and procedures over your key transaction cycles. And that helps us to determine where your financial statements are at what we call risk of material misstatement. And then that's where we deploy most of our audit resources, because we do not review 100% of your transactions in any given year. Some of the areas that generally have a higher risk of material misstatement are areas that have a high degree of estimation involved, where management's judgment, and when I say management, I generally mean the management of the finance department who are calculating and coming up with those estimates, where there's a high degree of judgment on their part. If there is a new accounting standards, there's also always elevated risk around that particular instance as a team is learning the ins and outs and how to apply that new standard. And then certainly this year, where the finance staff had a new implementation of an ERP system that managed all these transactions, there is a lot of risk around just that transaction, what I will call that transaction cut. So those are certain areas that we do tend to spend a lot of my last name was Offutt before I got married, so our audit resources. So I'm going to take you to this slide here now and speak more to this slide. But we have audited the financial statements of the town of Cary as of and for the year ended June 30th of 2025 in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards and government auditing standards. And those government auditing standards are like a second layer of auditing standards that are applied to governments. And those standards are prescribed by the United States Government Accountability Office. We have also issued or audited the town's compliance with the compliance requirements that are described in the audit requirements of federal and state awards. You may have heard it called uniform guidance. You may have heard it called a single audit, and also the annual the audit manual for governmental audits in North Carolina that could have a direct and material effect on your major programs. So we do not audit 100% of your federal and state award programs. There is a calculation, if you will, that is prescribed in the guidance that helps us identify which programs will be audited as major each year. So in doing that, we anticipate between now and February the 12th that we will be issuing unmodified opinions on the financial statements and on the federal and single audits. We are currently in the final phases of our own internal quality control reviews as we are wrapping that audit up. This slide just identifies the programs that were audited as major this year. We have your highway planning and construction program. We also audited the Federal Transit Cluster as a major program this year, and there were two programs that were part of that cluster, the Federal Transit Formula Grants as well as the Bus and Bus Facilities Formal Program. And then you had one major state program, and that is your POW bill. So all of those were similar programs in that they're all related to highways and transit. So I talked to this slide just a little bit earlier. When we are planning and performing our audit, we consider our internal control over financial reporting really as a basis for helping us design which audit procedures are appropriate in the circumstances. We are not testing your internal controls to the level where we can offer an opinion on the operating effectiveness of those controls, and we are not offering an opinion on the effectiveness of your operating controls. So this is getting into a little bit of oddities language, and so I hope you all will bear with me just a little bit. There are certain control deficiencies that are defined by our auditing standards. The first is a material weakness, and this is the highest level of standard or of deficiency. It's the one that we consider to be the most really significant. A material weakness is a deficiency or a combination of deficiencies, internal control, such that there is a reasonable possibility that a material misstatement in your financial statements would occur and would not be prevented or detected and corrected on a timely basis. The definition of a significant deficiency is very, very similar, but it's not as severe as a material weakness, but yet we still feel that it is important enough to bring to your attention as members of those charged with governance. This year, we did note two weaknesses that we consider to be material weaknesses. Dana referred to the first one just a little bit earlier. During the conduct of our audit, Mayor Weinbrecht reached out to me. We had conducted an interview earlier during the course of the audit, at which time, there was nothing, for lack of a better word, exciting to report. But during the conduct of the audit, Mayor Weinbrecht reached out to me on a weekend to let me know that he had concerns, that concerns had been brought to his attention, and he wanted to do the right thing and bring them to our attention as your auditors. And so from that point, he helped us to identify some other individuals, an employee of the town who wished to speak with us and provide information as a result of their conversations, and he provided us with some areas of concern. And as a result of that, we did expand our testing to look at some of the procurement cards as well as the travel and training for fiscal year 25. We are focused solely on 2025. And so I guess you would say the results of those procedures and additional inquiries led us to believe that the town had a deficiency in its internal control, specifically that control environment and the tone at the top. And there is an entity called the Committee on Sponsoring. It's the Committee on Sponsoring Organizations. I'm trying very hard not to use acronyms without defining them. We call that COSO. And COSO has done a lot of work on identifying the different elements of an internal control structure. And almost every government that you would step foot in, and as well as commercial businesses, use that internal control structure to design their internal controls. And the very foundation of an internal control structure is the control environment with the tone at the top, the tone that is set at the highest levels of management, being really important and the foundation of all of that. So the results of our procedures did indicate that your former town manager did not always consistently model or reinforce the expected ethical behavior that is laid out in your policy, in your ethics policy. Messaging from your former town manager did not always adequately communicate the importance of compliance with policies and procedures, accountability, and other internal control responsibilities. And unfortunately, we learned that employees did perceive that there was a risk of retaliation if they raised concerns. So we've given you more information there on the effect, but I think you all have been dealing with the effect and know that very well. So I will get down to the recommendation, which is that we recommend that as a body, we say the town, but essentially you all as those who are charged with governance, that you periodically evaluate the control environment by providing surveys, particularly anonymous surveys, that really would help you to evaluate employee perceptions of culture, leadership behavior, and the effectiveness of your internal controls as your team perceives it. And we further recommend that you consider strengthening your reporting mechanisms, so what you might sometimes call whistleblower mechanisms, and particularly your anti-retaliation protections that are provided to employees. The second material weakness is one that is very, very common. The following misstatement was identified during our audit. Kimberly talked to you all in the work session about closing out the audit and trying to identify all the transactions that occur in July, August, September before you close the books that are really related to the prior fiscal year. This year, the results of our audit procedures indicated that there was a grant receivable and related internal intergovernmental revenue in the amount of $2.1 million in governmental activities and capital projects fund. That was a material audit adjusting entries that needed to be recorded. So that would have increased both your grant receivable and increased your intergovernmental revenue. I will tell you this was not material to the governmental activities, but it is material to your capital projects major fund, and therefore that's why we're reporting this as a material weakness. So our recommendation for that is just that we recommend that the town enhance its financial close processes to include a reconciliation of their eligible grant expenses as they are reporting it on your schedule of expenditures of federal and state awards to your intergovernmental revenue. Okay. And then Dana mentioned that we did have some best practices to offer you. We do have 3. The first being that we believe you should consider adopting a policy that governs benefits that are provided to elected officials. I've laid out for you some of the things that you could consider including in such a policy, and we think the benefit of that is that this would really serve as a buffer between staff and elected officials when difficult decisions have to be made or advice needs to be communicated. The second control recommendation that we have, or I'm going to call that a best practices. It's not a deficiency in internal control. It's something that we see as we are conducting audits in other organizations that we think is good and that we like to pass on as advice to others. And that is that you develop a policy addressing your chamber intercity visits. We recognize that there are valid business purposes for these and that those purposes are myriad. There are a lot of different business purposes and things you can learn from those particular trips. We would just recommend that you consider establishing a policy that clearly delineates that information just for transparency to your citizens so that they too will understand the business purposes and the benefits of participating in those types of trips. And then the final recommendation that we have really relates to the dollar threshold for your P-card lost receipt form. The town does have detailed policies for how to report lost receipts for charges that are made on the P-card, but it does lack a strong defined dollar threshold above which employees would be required to reimburse the town for any P-card transaction for which they could not provide a valid supporting receipt. Kind of along with that, just to reduce the frequency of lost receipts and improve record retention, we would also recommend that you consider adopting a cloud-based digital tool for the receipt and storage of receipts, just to make it a little easier on your employees to retain those and get those turned in appropriately. Okay, corrected misstatement. This is a slide I'll go through very quickly because I talked about this already when I talked about the material weakness, but we did have the $2.1 million audit adjusting entry related to grants receivable. And then the uncorrected misstatement, this really centers around the implementation of a new accounting standard, GASB Statement Number 101, compensated absences. So just as a course of being an employer, the town provides certain benefits, including leave pay for its employees, vacation pay, sick pay. There are a number of different types of leave. This standard changed the way that governments have to measure that compensated absences. It is something that had to be applied by all governments in order to be in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So during the conduct of that, we did identify that the beginning balance was misstated, $1,145,807. Let me back that up. When you apply one of these new standards, you have to apply it what we call retrospectively, so as if it had been in place at the beginning of the fiscal year, so that your years are comparative. So your town was required to make a change to the beginning balance. When you look at these financial statements in detail, it will say net position is previously reported, and then it will have a restatement. So that restatement is what we're talking about there. So there was about $1 million that ran through current fiscal year that really should have been pushed to the beginning balance. At the end of the day, your compensated absence balance is correct, your ending net position is correct, and this is an immaterial dollar amount. So, we brought it to the attention of management, but it wasn't reclassified. I know that's a little complicated. It's kind of an auditor thing, and probably not the most exciting thing we'll talk about tonight. I will go through this slide very quickly. This is, again, you did implement GASB Statement Number 101, compensated absences this year. I will tell you this was a heavier lift on your team than what we thought it would be when this standard first came out, so they had to put a lot of work into this standard. Required a lot of historical analysis. As part of our audit, we did evaluate the town's identification of, accounting for, and disclosure of the town's relationships and transactions with related parties, understanding that I have communicated certain issues with you related to your former town manager. We noted no additional related party transactions or related transactions that were previously undisclosed to us, and we did not have any issues with any other transactions of that nature. Now, sometimes governments will enter into transactions for which there is not any authoritative literature that tells them how to record that transaction. However, all significant transactions that you have in your financial statements we were able to apply authoritative guidance to those transactions. So for the purpose of my presentation, professional standards define significant, unusual transactions as those that are outside the normal course of business for the town or otherwise appear to be unusual due to their timing, due to the size, or due to the nature of the transaction. So something that a lot of governments are participating now in, and you've probably heard a lot about it, are public-private partnerships. So those don't happen every day, and we consider something like that, just to give you an example, that might be significant and unusual for you all. I talked about accounting estimates earlier, and the fact that those do include a degree of estimation and a degree of judgment. I've identified for you here those significant estimates, the ones that we consider to be significant. And what we do around those estimates is we review the inputs, we review the historical trends, we just really look at all the assumptions and the calculations to make sure that those are reasonable, in our opinion, in relationship to the financial statement as a whole, and we found them to be so. We also like to see that those estimates are consistent from year to year. So we don't want to see governments changing their methodologies for calculating those estimates from year to year, and yours are consistent. Your financial statement disclosures are neutral, consistent, and clear from year to year. And then finally, this is something that I am required to tell you all, is that we do provide you with one non-attest service. A non-attest service is anything we do for you that is not strictly related to auditing the financial statements. Because you are subject to a federal single audit, Another step in that procedure is that you are required to file your financial statements with the Federal Audit Clearinghouse and to enter information related to your schedule of expenditures of federal awards into a data collection form. And I tell people, it's not really the easiest form to use. I know that's probably surprising that a federal website would not be terribly easy to use. But we do hundreds of those every year for our clients, and our team is very proficient in using that. So we provide that service to your team here. We download the information, we give it to Kimberly and her team to review and approve, and once they have done so, that is uploaded, and Kimberly will get on the site, she will certify it, and finally submit that. So all that is to say, the reason it's important that I tell you about non-attest services is that sometimes if a firm provides too many non-attest services to you, it can impair independence. So we always make that known to you, that we have that non-attest service. We've evaluated that service. It's nothing that we believe impairs our independence, and we are not aware of any other circumstances or relationships that create threats to our independence. As I started this presentation by saying, we work very hard to guard our independence by rotating new members onto this team every year. During the course of our audit, we did not encounter any significant difficulties in dealing with the management of your financial staff, of your financial department. They provided all the information that we requested. They provided it in a timely manner, and to our knowledge and belief, they have answered all the many questions that we have posed fully and to the best of their ability. We did not have any disagreements with management on any kind of financial reporting, accounting, or auditing matter. Everything that we have been reviewed, every question we've had, the adjustment that we provided has been resolved to our satisfaction. We did not have any matters ourselves that we had to consult outside of our engagement team and get another opinion. At the end of this audit, as we are getting ready to issue, we are going to request certain representations from management that will be included in a management representation letter. It will be signed by Kimberly as the finance director, Mr. Overton as the interim town manager. I tell people this is 5 or 6 pages of very specific information about the town's responsibility for internal controls, the town's responsibility to report to us known fraud, very specific representations about how the financial statement elements are measured. And at the end of the day, those 5 or 6 pages boil down to saying, we've provided you with everything that you've asked for, and we do not know of any information that would change the unmodified opinion that you are receiving on your financial statements. So that is the short version of that 5 or 6 page letter. In some cases, management at our clients may decide that they want to consult with another accountant about auditing and accounting matters. It's really similar to obtaining a second opinion on certain situations. And occasionally, one of our clients won't like our interpretation of a generally accepted accounting principle, or they'll disagree with us that an issue is a material weakness, and they'll go out and get a second opinion. To our knowledge, there were no such consultations with other accountants or auditors. We generally discuss a variety of matters throughout the year about the application of accounting principles and auditing standards. All those discussions occurred in the normal course of our professional relationship. Fraud and illegal acts, this is something that I just want to point out to you because I know you're concerned. Management did report to us very early on. I think it was maybe the second conversation I ever had with Kimberly and Dara, but management reported to us that check fraud in the amount of $1.3 million was perpetrated against the town on or about April the 2nd of 2025. So that was perpetrated by an outside party. Upon being made aware of this incident, the financial department's management immediately reported the incident to police to get that on record. They also reported it to its financial institution. The town did not suffer financial loss as a result of this incident, as the financial institution credited the town's account for the amount of the fraudulent check that went through the positive pay system. And so we were able to see audit evidence of that amount coming back into the town. We did not have any internal control recommendations related to that particular incident because it appeared to have happened external to that check leaving this building. Additionally, as I stated earlier, Mayor Weinberg reached out to us during the course of our audit and reported to us the potential misuse of the town's funds by the former town manager. And as we have discussed, we did report a material weakness related to the strengthening of the town's control environment, specifically the tone at the top. And then I have identified the other investigations that we have been made aware that those inquiries or investigations are ongoing. Going concern. Going concern has to do with the town's financial sustainability into the future, particularly looking at the next 12 months, and no events or conditions were noted that gave us any indication that there was a doubt about the town's ability to continue as a going concern. Kimberly talked to you all about the different pieces of your annual comprehensive financial report. It's much easier to say ACFR, so I'm gonna go with that. You do have your required supplementary information. Those are particularly your management's discussion and analysis, and the schedules that really give information on your participation in your employee benefit plans, your pension and OPEB plans, other post-employment benefits. Those documents, that RSI, as we call it, is not audited. We review that information to make sure it is consistent with the financial statements and consistent with our audit evidence, and we found it to be so, but we do not express an opinion. The financial statements also include supplementary information, such as your schedule of expenditures of federal awards and federal and state awards. We do audit that schedule, the supplementary information, and we anticipate that we will issue an unmodified opinion on that supplementary information in relation to the financial statements as a whole. Kimberly discussed other information, your introductory and your statistical section. That information accompanies the financial statement. It is not required supplementary information because the standard setter does not require it, the standard setter being the Government Accounting Standards Board. But similar to the RSI, we do not audit or express an opinion on that other information. We review it to make sure that it is consistent, again, with the financial statements and our audit evidence. And finally, there are 3 new standards that will be coming online that your finance department will be working through. GASB Statement Number 103, Financial Reporting Model Improvements. There will be changes to the contents, what is required in your management's discussion and analysis. That's one of the key things that will affect the town. Additionally, there will be some changes to your proprietary fund statements, particularly your utility fund that you all talked about earlier. None of these changes will change the numbers. It won't change the way those numbers are measured, but it will change where they are presented within the financial statements. There will be some changes to where your budgetary comparison schedules are. Right now you have them as statements, they will move to schedules. So things will just move around. Just as you've learned where everything is, they're going to move on you. GASB Statement Number 104, Disclosure of Certain Capital Assets. This, again, it doesn't change the way capital assets are measured. That there are some new disclosure requirements. I do not anticipate this will be a problem for your staff. You are largely reporting in conformity with that standard already. And then finally, there's GASB Statement Number 105, Subsequent Events, that has to do with events that might arise between the date of the financial statements, June the 30th of any given fiscal year, and the date that the audit report on those standards is finally issued, and whether it gives you guidance and a definition on what qualifies as a subsequent event that should be either recognized in the financial statements or disclosed in the notes to the financial statements. I have my contact information so that if I do not answer something for you tonight, or you think of something after tonight, you can reach out to my email or my phone number, and I'm very happy to speak with you. So with that, that is the end of my prepared remarks. I know some of you all may have questions for me. If you don't
Questions
mind, I'm
for
going
Ms.
to drink
Waters?
a drink of water.
She's talking. Need it.
There's a lot of talking.
A lot of talking.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is my first time to go through the first audit as a new council member. And my first question is, this audit is like math calculation of all the financial reports? You're just checking the numbers are correctly calculated, but the use of these funds or some of the numbers, you won't ask the question about why this expenses is more than the previous years.
So I guess the answer to that question really hinges around the purpose of the audit, which is whether or not the financial statements are materially misstated. So, and where we assess our risk of material misstatement. So transactions that fall below a certain calculated number have a lower chance of getting selected as part of our audit testing and procedures. We really tend to focus on those audit areas where we have assessed risk of material misstatement to be high. One of the things that we do is we do some comparative analysis between years, and we do ask questions and gain audit evidence about why why balances may have materially fluctuated. I would have to look at my working papers, but between 2025 and 2024, there were not a high degree of areas that had a lot of fluctuation.
So can I follow up just to be clear? There are hundreds of thousands
Yes.
of transactions, and you test certain ones. So they just pull
Sample test.
certain ones,
Yes.
ones that they think might be risky or different. So just to be clear.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So I'm pretty sure this is probably out of your scope, but I'm still going to ask. So the two material deficiencies that you have identified, is there any potential impact on our AAA rating? Or do we need to be ready for that kind of impact?
I don't know that I can answer that. That would be better for your bond advisor to answer. I apologize.
No, you're fine. I didn't think so, but wondering.
So I have a question. What is the scope of your audit engagement with respect to internal town policies?
Sure.
With specifically, compliance requirements. So for instance, our policy 175 that says, what speaks to the need of keeping a third of our general fund expenditure listed. Is that reviewed for compliance as part of the audit?
When we review compliance, and when you get our report, you will also get what we call our yellow book letter. It's our audit, it's our report over of your independent auditor on internal control over financial reporting in accordance with government auditing standards. I'm really proud that I can say that from memory. I've
impressed.
only read it 45 times this year. What we're really focusing on are contracts, grant agreements, statutes that are external to this government, not your internal policies and procedures. We're really looking more at third-party type issues, and that is what would rise to the level of a finding.
So follow on, it's mentioned within the act for our policy 175. Actually, maybe it's part of the boilerplate, that says
Sure.
you will keep to this. If if during your audit procedure, you become aware of a noncompliance with an internal policy that isn't within your standard scope, would you communicate that to management or council? Because, and the reason I bring that up is I went and looked at the ACFR for Raleigh, which you all do, and they do have a section within their ACFR about their town policy or their city policy, and it actually specifies where they were, right? And what percentage they're at and all of that. So I'm wondering how, maybe they ask for that as part of their statement of work? I'm just surprised that it's not part of ours.
That is something we recalculate. You have a note. It's called the unassigned fund balance note.
Yes,
And in
page
that-
84.
There you go. You actually describe that. And so one of the things we do is we recalculate it. So I recalculated it this year just to make sure that Kimberly wasn't misreporting the 33, that she was there when she wasn't. So normally, yes, if we would probably say something, I think what we would say is not a finding, but we would say, hey, Kimberly, this amount isn't right. You didn't report the right percent.
So it's not part of your standard alignment, part of your stated scope, maybe?
I would say that is something we would recommend that you would change your disclosure on. It would not be something that would be a finding.
I see.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you happened to look at it this year because it bubbled up?
Well, just because I'm just new.
Okay,
I was
okay.
completely new to your audit, and so I've read every word of your financial statements 3 times now.
Okay.
So because I was new, I was very cognizant of those things.
Okay, and I'm curious how you would feel if I told you that we were out of fund balance for a year that Cherry Becker did an audit for us. What would you say to that? Would that surprise
It would be hard for me
you?
to say because I don't know about the judgments that the audit team used or the conversations that they might have had.
Okay.
Other questions?
But if I'm understanding correctly, you were saying it's not that you would say we were out of compliance with our policy,
Policies.
but you would just note that what was documented was not calculated correctly?
So let me just back this up a little bit. When we review your financial statements, we have a lot of back and forth with your staff. And we make recommendations to them. We don't draft these financial statements, but we might say to them, hey, we don't agree that this is reported appropriately and you need to make a change. We would like you to consider to make a change is how we would say that. In the course of this engagement, your team has been very compliant, I guess is the word, in making the changes that we recommend. Both my changes as the engagement director who does the first level review, as well as our second reviewer. He had a number of recommended changes for their consideration as well. And I just want to say, what we're always focusing on is, are these financial statements materially correct in relation to government accounting principles?
Other questions? Thank you.
I have a couple.
Oh.
I'm sorry. I was just waiting. You look like you were going to ask something.
I'm not ready yet.
I know your looks when you're going to ask a question. Is there someone, if not you, in your firm that can offer us an opinion on the ERP that we chose?
Yes.
Yes, later?
Yes.
Yes, not you.
Yes,
Okay, thank
it's
you.
not me. I tell people
yeah.
I'm real good with numbers,
The
not so
entire
much with
system,
the
the entire
ERPs, but
system.
yes, ma'am, we do have someone that could give you some information on that.
Not that I don't trust that the team chose something excellent. I would just like to have a sort of a independent opinion on that.
And one thing that I would tell you that we did have our IT team talk with the team here, talk about what they did, what their controls were to ensure that the information transitioned over appropriately. But I will tell you, just from watching teams implement ERPs, it's a very time-consuming, very heavy lift, no matter how good the product may be.
Sure, appreciate that. And I think this question, I think, is for our staff, and then I was wondering if you could tell me just a little bit more so I better understand how the, I think it was 2.1 million grant receivable revenue was not recorded or misrecorded.
I was trying to figure out which,
How to ask it, because I saw it said, okay, but it was added to the ledger. I'm using the wrong words. I am not an accountant. But it was clear that it was added and it's reflected currently in our capital fund balance. But I'm just curious about, how something like that can go unrecorded, and in fact, what unrecorded actually means in layman's terms.
Well, I may need to let Kimberly answer part of that question.
Sure.
But let me tell you the way we identified that transaction. So one of the things that we need to do every time we do an audit at any government that has a federal single audit is we take, because we're issuing an opinion on your schedule of expenditures of federal awards, we want to make sure that it is correct. And so one of the things we do is reconcile it back to your financial statements and back to your general ledgers. In this case, we were out by that $2 million. We just couldn't identify it. And so we reached out here to staff. They investigated it more, and they were able to determine that this expense had been recorded, but that the corresponding accounts receivable had not been made. I have something in my memory about why that happened, but I don't want to misspeak on their behalf.
Appreciate that.
Okay.
Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate your time. And again, if after today other questions arise, please feel free to reach out to my contact information.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm so happy to see you again this evening, and very pleased to be before you to share financial highlights from the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025. Leanne provided an update on the audit, including the audit process and key findings that support the results I will present. I will provide a deeper dive into two of our major funds, with a primary focus on the general fund, with a summary highlight of the utility fund. Before we move further into the presentation, I want to highlight a few important points. This year's audit has been especially special because it included several major transitions. First, we have a few new staff members who participated in their first year audit with the town. And secondly, Dana and Leanne actually gave reference to, this is our first year for producing financial statements using the town's new financial system. We are now using Oracle Fusion, a cloud-based system that took us about 2 years of focused, deliberate work to finally say we are going live. Despite these changes, and some say challenges, the team has worked diligently and collaboratively, and we are grateful to be nearing completion of this year's audit process. I could not have asked for a stronger team. If I may take a minute to recognize some of the superstars who have stuck it out and continue to say yes to this work each and every day. I have with me tonight both of the assistant directors, Denisha Harris and Dara Schaffner, and also a member of our reporting team. And without Dara actually leads off our reporting area. Without her, I will say we probably would not be where we are right now. So we're very appreciative, and I just want to say thank you all for that. I also want to sincerely thank you all, each of you, for your leadership, dedication, and steadfast commitment to Cary's financial stewardship. Your engagement and guidance continue to be essential to Cary's financial strength and long-term success. As a reminder, during our quarterly meeting in November, I provided an initial overview of where the town's financial performance was trending for fiscal year 2025. I am hoping by the completion of our presentations, you will also feel confident in what we're doing. Sorry about that. First, I want to, as a takeaway I have for you, Cary is in strong financial position. Spending remains within budget for major funds. Revenue continues to show growth year over year, and we are able to add amounts to fund balance for future consideration as of the end of the year. Second, we met the policy that is set for the general fund's fund balance. Third, our utility fund, another major fund, continues to show positive results. And lastly, with our anticipated clean, unmodified opinion that Ms. Waters just discussed, we are well positioned to continue to build on our foundation of growth to advance further in our financial management. As a result of the independent financial audit, staff is able to compile and distribute the annual financial report. That is referred to as our annual comprehensive financial report, also known as the ACFR. The ACFR is compiled with 4 sections in mind, to keep in mind. They are the introduction, the financial section, the statistical section, and the compliance section. Tonight, as part of our work session, each of you received copies of the draft ACFR for the financial sections of the audit. For purposes of the public, if you are interested in definitions of these sections, please refer to the most recent streaming of Cary's work session from this afternoon. Okay, reflecting on fiscal year 2025, several of these highlights may feel familiar. A significant portion of the change noted this year was driven by increased property tax revenue resulting from the effective tax rate combined with the Wake County revaluation that took place effective this fiscal year. Sales tax continued to show nominal growth during the year. To remain consistent with the town's broader financial strategy, Cary stayed focused on cash flow, strategic investment in existing assets, and careful stewardship of fund balance. As a result, budget line items were monitored more closely, and additional capital projects were closed out due to the reassessment work council went through as part of the budget planning process, both of which supported a stronger operational bottom line for this year. To see the makeup of the general fund, 59% is for property tax, followed by 21% in sales tax, which is included within the other taxes and licenses. Sales and services round out the top 3, which is where sanitation and parks and recreation revenue is captured. On the expense side, public safety is representing 27% of total spending, alongside general government, which is also at 27%. Public works representing 13% of spending, leaving about 33% for debt service, development, infrastructure, and other. When reviewing actual figures from the audited financial statements, please note that the fiscal year 2025, the general fund received $281 million in operational revenue and incurred $266 million in operational expenditures. When including all fund activity, the general fund also had net transfers of about 7.8. As a result, the positive net outcome comparing total revenues and expenditures was $23.6 million. This amount represents the change in fund balance recognized for fiscal year 2025, and it is very positive and exciting news. When highlighting this dashboard of results for 2025, operating revenues came in slightly over budget and increased 20% compared to the prior year. The largest contributor to this revenue performance, as mentioned, was the property tax, of which we collected almost 100% by year end. Sales tax recognized the nominal 1% growth year over year. Current year trends in sales tax are showing a slight improvement. However, fiscal year 2025 concluded with the slow growth. Operating expenditures include items such as personnel, contracted services, and small equipment. Percentages spent are also slightly different from previous year. Spending was 98% of budget compared to about 94% in the prior year. Total expenses were up 1%. This increase is nominal and consistent with year over year and previous year. This change is related to department's continuous thinking around monitoring cost as a strategic way to replenish fund balance levels depleted by previous year's investments. For fund balance, current policy states that fund balance is to be 33.33% of budgeted expenditures, when for fiscal year 2025, that amounted to $85 million and estimates about 4 months. As we have referenced in a previous slide, we added an additional $23.6 million based on performance during this year, increasing fund balance to $106 million. This is more than the policy suggests. Now that Cary is shifting to a more mature community, we will revisit some of our policy statements, such as this one, to make assessment on if they are still relevant for today. Switching to our other major fund, the utility fund, it continues to perform positively. Revenue increased about 2.5% compared to prior year. These results were in line with the budget expectations. On the expense side, operating expenses decreased at the same rate as the revenue increase, and that was the 2.5%. So that yielded almost a break-even result for the fiscal year. To bring us back to the key takeaways from our fiscal year 2025 financial results. The town continues to be in strong financial position with an additional $23.6 million added to the fund balance for the fiscal year. We also met our financial policies and guidelines, and our fiscal year 2025 fund balance results exceeded the town's fund balance policy. As you will recall from prior discussions, actions taken to support and maintain the town's financial health included the timely closure of capital projects, which allowed residual funds to be reverted back to their original funding sources, as well as delaying spending on non-critical initiatives. Going to next steps, staff will submit the final annual comprehensive financial report by February 12th, this year's updated deadline, to the LGC. You all will receive a bounded copy shortly after that date. Simultaneously, we are working to finalize our citizen-friendly publication, the Popular Annual Financial Report. We call that a PAFR. The ACFR, along with the PAFR, will be submitted to the GFOA, which is the Government Finance Officers Association, for reporting awards upon completion of this year's audit. That concludes my presentation. If there are any questions, I am here along with Leanne, Dana, and of course Russ to answer any of your questions.
Who wants
Thank you.
to start?
You, maybe. Yeah.
Well, my questions are not as much about what has been presented, which I think you did a very good job, thank you, is more for us. We've been in a maintenance mode, so while it looks very rosy and nice, it's really not, because we have unfunded police, fire, everything else. And I don't know the impact of that, and we won't know until we get into the budget.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we'll have just as we are tonight, robust conversations about last year's budget. We're going to have very robust conversations about next year's proposed budget.
But I think that's important to put out there, because this looks like, wow, we're doing great, and we got a lot of extra money. Not really, because we have a lot of unfunded positions. So.
I think it's a good point, just jumping on to what you said. It looks good right now because halfway through the year, we basically stopped everything we were doing. Mm-hmm. And so we had, what, 168? Unfunded?
68.
Sorry, 68. The 68 got it. The 68 unfunded capital projects that were not started that citizens expected. Some of those even might have been from 2019 bond items. So it looks good. and we caught up maybe, and we diverted from going off the cliff, and now we have to get back on the road to doing what we do best, which is to fund police, fire, parks, and give the services that our citizens
And
expect.
infrastructure.
Yeah,
Sidewalks.
sidewalks. Right.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Kimberly, could you please tell us if there is a healthy proportion of our fund, that fund balance we keep talking about? Is there a healthy portion of that that's not committed, or, as I learned earlier, unencumbered?
As of June 30th, 2025, if you look at the statements that we talked about tonight, you will see an amount that says unassigned. I think that's a safe number to look at. That's a healthy number to look at as unrestricted or unassigned, uncommitted.
I have a somewhat related question. Kimberly, you've helped Bella and I read our ACFR and understand that when meeting our fund balance requirements, there is a point at which we have too much in fund balance, and that is also a deviation from best practice. Is that a hard and fast threshold? Is that somewhat subjective? In hearing that we actually are now exceeding our fund balance, how much are we exceeding it by? Or are we entering that territory where we're keeping too much in fund balance?
So it's not a hard and fast calculation. Most of the time, we would hear about it from, say, our local government commission who looks at our levels compared to peers. However, what I will say is, we talked about we're going to be looking at these policies going forward, and so I think those questions are great to ask, like at what level do we want to keep fund balance, and what will happen to those amounts over fund balance? Yeah.
And Kimberly, we did cover some of this during our work session, but for the benefit of those that are here today in the council meeting, and those are, have joined us virtually, we did have a slight dip in 2023 fund balance. It went down by 2%, right? So we were at 31%.
So our floor, our policy says 33.33%. For 2023, we were between 31 and 32%.
So there was a slight dip.
That's right.
But we recovered, and we caught issues at the right time, put things on hold.
Yep.
And that's how we kind of recovered, and now we're in a recovery and maintenance mode for that reason.
That is correct.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so for the $23 million this year, going to add to the reserve. So is that definitely going there, or we are still have opportunities to use this?
That's budget.
That
We'll
is
talk about that at budget.
With the budget discussions for next year.
Yeah.
One of the things that was also brought up when we talked about the ACFR is that this is a new year that our current contract with Cary Beckert ends this year, and we have the opportunity to go back out. Does that mean we also have the opportunity to talk about what that statement of work or contractual agreement might look like?
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
Because I think that, lesson learned, what I think might be great is to be able to have a detailed understanding of where we are in the fund balance, so that we don't have to go back and forth the pages and do the math ourselves. Having the auditor or the finance department highlight to
Just
us
write
where
it
we
up.
are, and also that way we have the transparency associated, not just with us, but also with our residents. And as we move forward and have the discussions about what is the right number for fund balance, when Raleigh's fund balance percentage is 17%, right? And ours is 33 and a third.
And we're sitting at
There's
41.
And we're sitting at 41.
there are different methods, right? And we'll bring options to you. So like with Raleigh, they look at unassigned, which is a category. Our policy is based on total fund balance. So, there's so many differences there that we'll have to allow you guys to consider.
So that, I think, as we negotiate and look for a new contract, that extra visibility, extra accountability, extra transparency would be really helpful.
I think our Mayor Pro Tem, Lori Bush, also made a comment in work session, which I want to share with everyone, with your permission.
Sure.
To
What
highlight to color code the fund balance so that we know that, it is in alignment with the policy, so that we don't have to go look for it. And, to your point, we don't have to calculate ourselves, but, it could just become a second habit where we're just, we look for that color coding and we can identify that number easily.
Yeah, I have to say that when I was trying to understand it a little bit more, I looked at other municipalities' ACFRs, CAFRs, ACFRs, and what I enjoyed reading was actually Raleigh's, because they actually talked about what their fund balance is, how they got there, where they moved money from and to in order to keep the fund balance, and how to support the financial allocation of general fund revenues. It was quite transparent in a way that says, we were getting a little bit low, here's what we did, and here's why we did it. And it was written in a way that anyone could understand.
And Lori, I want to make a comment that I was hoping to make, which I think speaks to somewhat to what you're saying. Kimberly, you and any of the finance or budget staff that I've interacted with was incredibly knowledgeable, and never guesses, which I love. Brings back the information when we ask a question. I'm only speaking for myself here, but I'm sure some of my colleagues will agree. What I would like to have more of is your context, your opinion, and such. I feel as though we probably would have gotten a lot more of this kind of information previous to now if there was, just a different attitude, or, with our leadership, right, at the very top, sort of being the filter sometimes. I would really like to, a lot more hear what you think, if that makes sense, because
Are you sure you want that?
I want to hear. Okay. I can't tell you how much. Like, I really do. Because when we have conversations, and, if I've asked you a question directly or whatever, you give such incredibly helpful context. And it not just tells me what that number or the answer to the question is, but it makes me understand relative to why I'm asking where we are or what it affects, what the number actually means. And so I just wanted to invite you to speak your mind.
Appreciate it.
And get in, and I'm looking for, of course, your very specific information that you tend to deliver to us. But I'd also like to hear your color commentary and your opinion.
Very good.
And Kimberly, for the benefit of people who are listening and who are watching this meeting today, could you explain the process? Like, I know that in the previous meeting, we kind of covered this in more detail. Like, when do we conclude this? When do we start our next discussion so that, we can track those timelines? I know that's probably not what
Are you talking about the timeline for how we get our report?
So how do we conclude this, like,
Okay.
right now? And what is I know you have next steps here, but then what does it, like, exactly to what Councilwoman Khan Johnson said, translate this for us a little bit more?
So we're continuing our audit. The financial piece is complete. We're still working on the compliance piece. That piece, just as a reminder, was delayed because of the federal shutdown. As a result of that, the Local Government Commission extended the formal deadline for submissions of jurisdictions' financial reports to them to February the 12th. So between now and February 12th, we are hoping to, Leanne, wrap up this year's audit. So then we'll start all over again. But February 12th is our deadline that we have to have things submitted formally to the Local Government Commission, and we can call it done from an audit perspective.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Just one more question about the recommendations that were made by our auditor. Some of them we're in the process of doing, like the surveys, but there were a couple of other comments associated with protections, ensuring no retaliation. Is there a group that is working on implementing some of these recommendations?
We're going to add them to the implementation group that will be working on policies and procedures.
Great. So then we will see that back as a kind of a follow-up to the recommendation?
Yes, at some point. And also, I think it'll be fitting to find out what Womble Dickinson recommends to you so that we add those to the list as well.
Will they be iterative, or are you going to wait until all of them?
I think they'll have to be iterative,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Carissa asked the question earlier about the 2.1 million.
Yep.
And she said that you could provide more insight.
So I can tell you that from our review process that we normally do, it was an oversight. Because what typically happens is we know we spend money during the year. Technically, we should go through all of them and say, is this eligible for reimbursement? If it's eligible for reimbursement within a short period of time, we should accrue it back as a receivable and a revenue. And so then in this case, it didn't pass the SNF internally, which is why we immediately said, yes, we should book this entry.
Other questions?
Can I bring up the last question? Because we are talking about the fund balance a lot, but that seems to be, especially for the staff or the council and the mayor, we care about that a lot. But as a citizen, they may want to just to hear, are we spending healthy, wisely, and the property tax they paid, and did they cover all the services? Could you give us a more a description, a conclusion about that? We're doing a good job, or we still have to fund more? Like,
So when we look at, for fiscal year 2025, when we look at our revenue compared to our expenses, and this is going back to our general fund because that's our operating fund, reminder, we are adding, revenues minus expenses was about 23.6 positive. That means we had no use of our reserves of fund balance. That means we could add to fund balance. So that's why we were able to add. Now, if we have a year, and sometimes we do, it's planned, we may have expenditures over revenue. But again, it would be planned by you all's authorization through some type of budget action. If that's the case, if it's a negative number, revenues and expenses, that's when we are eating into fund balance. But for the past couple of years, we've had positive results, so we have not had that need.
So I want to put that in layman's terms, the way I understand it. You have to have more money at the end of the year. If you don't, you have to dip into savings.
You will dip into
Your
reserves.
savings is your fund balance. You asked the question earlier, is it bad to have a high fund balance? I have a personal opinion, because if you're collecting revenue and you're taking debt instead of using the revenue, if you got too much, then that's not a good use of taxpayer dollars. But that's a personal opinion. We're going to go there. We're going to have this discussion. But it's a danger that we're in. I think if we're at 41%, I think.
For as of June 30th, 2025, yes.
41% of operations, you know, cities on the coast that have to deal with hurricanes are at 35%, and we're higher than that. So that's a discussion we definitely have to have. So I appreciate that very much. And does anybody else have any questions? Because
I was just going to say
okay.
quickly that I think that's why it's so important what Kim said about revisiting the policy statements to see if it's still relevant for us to maintain that percentage of fund balance, because things have changed. Our community has changed over the years, and it may be that that number isn't the right amount for us to maintain, which goes along with what you're saying. Are we meeting the needs of the community and the expectations and finding that balance?
I would like to just thank you and your entire team. Doing your job every day is hard enough, but to do it while you're under the scrutiny of so many people, including us.
And the
state,
inundated by public records requests.
yeah, and you know, the state auditor. I mean, you do your job as transparently as possible all the time, but this is an additional level, and some of our questions are hard enough, but hearing your job, you know, rung through the ringer online, you guys do the hard work every day behind the scenes, and I just wanted to thank you and the entire team for also putting together a presentation. I don't think I've ever heard such a very detailed walkthrough of the ACFR, and the amount of passion that you all have really does translate into what makes Cary great. So I'd like to thank you all for what you do every single day, especially with everybody looking over your shoulder at the same time.
Thank you for those kind comments. We appreciate it.
Agree. Yeah, agree. Thank you.
thank you.
And I would like to close this, thank you. Close this out by repeating what Russ said earlier. This is an not an investigation. This is a report of our finances. And they explain very well what this report is. It's not an opinion. That will be the state auditor. They're an elected body. They will certainly have an opinion. And I have a feeling it won't be very rosy, but we will hear from them. And we also have the DA and the SBI looking into things. Don't know if they'll find anything. We have no idea, no information what's going on with them. And then we have the internal investigation where they will try to come up with additional policy and procedure changes to make us stronger, to make sure this never happens again. Did I cover that?
Yes,
Okay.
sir. So this basically takes one of the four and
Right.
kind of concludes that information for us.
So there's more coming. If you're here and wondering, is that it? No, there's more coming. Anything else before we move on? All right, thank you. And if I can get my agenda back up, hold on just a second. Here we go. All right, we've reached the public speaks out portion of our meeting.
Oh, manager's update.
What's that?
Manager's update.
I skipped right over the manager because I already called on the manager.
Yes.
You get to do it again.
I
I'd like to-
introduced the last topic. I have an update as well.
Okay, please.
It's going to be eerily similar to Councilmember Bush's ceremonial opening comments as well, because you may have seen there's lots of staff up in the seats tonight. But I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about our response to the winter weather response also that we've seen over the past few weeks as we were hit by back-to-back storms, winter weather storms, which they obviously name now, Fern, and then Winter Storm Gianna. And together, they made it for a challenging week for a stretch of 2 weekends in a row for our staff. So employees were out treating roads. I don't have all the data, so Councilmember Bush already gave it, but responding to issues, keeping critical services running, often during long hours and tough conditions. And what really stood out, as it normally does during any kind of emergency operations that we do, is how many people step up and go beyond their regular roles, taking time away from their families and their personal commitments to work extra shifts and help wherever they are needed. So we wanted to be sure to take time tonight to thank those staff members and recognize a special group that are here that went above and beyond to help. And I'd ask Chief Cooper to come up and say a few words. And then I'd also say that I expect that they have learned a lot about our financial statements as they were up there for the last hour and 40 minutes. So thank you all for being here.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you, Mr. Overton. And Ms. Bush, you did a great job summarizing the statistics. Great job. So good evening, Mayor and Council. I'd like to take a moment to formally recognize and thank the more than 400 employees who worked extended hours over 2 consecutive weekends during the recent storms. This was a very challenging stretch for our organization. Responding to weather like this requires more than reporting for a regular shift. It means employees coming in on short notice, working long and often overnight hours, and setting aside normal responsibilities to support the town and our residents. Despite the difficult conditions, these employees stepped up without hesitation to ensure continuity of operations and kept essential town services running smoothly. Excuse me. Their efforts were critical in maintaining public safety, supporting residents, and ensuring that our facilities, infrastructure, and communications remained operational throughout the storms. Many staff members served in the Emergency Operations Center, some for the first time, participating in special meetings, coordinating response efforts, and helping ensure decisions were made quickly and safely. Others worked overnight and extended shifts in the field or behind the scenes while balancing time away from their families and personal commitments. Throughout both storms, staff worked closely with our neighboring jurisdictions and partner agencies, reflecting the strength of our emergency preparedness and our regional partnerships. The names of the staff who supported storm response are listed on the screen. If you're here this evening and worked during either of those storms, I would ask you to please stand so you can be recognized. Thank you. I would also like to offer special recognition to our Public Works team, the A-plus team. The Public Works team, whose long hours and hazardous conditions helped ensure roads remained passable, infrastructure functioned, and critical services uninterrupted. To everyone who supported the storm's response, thank you for your dedication, flexibility, and teamwork. Your efforts made a real difference in this community and exemplify the high standard of service our residents expect and deserve. Thank you for your support, Council.
Chief, thank you. I have to say that when I talk about Cary and talk about the best of the best, this is a perfect example. There's nobody compares to you guys. We're the first ones with the roads clear, and that really impacts the citizens. They really notice it, and they really talk about it. So thank you. I can't imagine going, especially after the first storm. I think I talked to you, and I said, you guys got to really be tired, and then here we go again. And you had back-to-back, and you did both of those excellently. And I'm so proud to be a citizen, let alone the mayor. So thank you for all the work and your team did during these storms.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, did I skip anything else? Sorry about that. Okay. Our next item is Public Speaks Out, and we've included instructions for speaking at this forum online and on the printed agenda. And there's 3 opportunities for you to participate in Public Speaks Out. You can do it through written comments, or by calling in, or by attending here in person tonight. And if you're here in person and would like to speak, I would ask that you please take a seat in the rows to my right that are highlighted. Public Speaks Out have 3 minutes each for their comments, and you may speak on any topic that is not a public hearing, and that's to your benefit because public hearing speakers get more time. The 3-minute time limit will be enforced, not to be rude, but to be fair to all of our speakers. We have a timer on the podium. It'll start off with a green light, and when it turns yellow, that's a signal that you have 30 seconds remaining and you should try to wrap up. And when it's flashing red, that's the point I'll interrupt you. Again, not trying to be rude, but just trying to be fair to all of our speakers. I would ask that all speakers please be respectful and address the council as a whole rather than individual members. And I'll remind everyone that this is a business meeting, even though we just had applause. This is the business portion of the meeting, and we would ask that you treat it as such. Public Speaks Out has 1 hour for this actual part of the agenda. I would ask that you please refrain from applauding, speaking from your seats, using props, or engaging in any behavior that may distract from the council listening to the speakers. Interruptions, including applause, actually take away from that 1 hour time limit that we have. And that would reduce the available time for Public Speaks Out. So we ask that you please don't do that. Thank you in advance for adhering to our guidelines and keeping this meeting effective and respectful. This forum is intended for council members to listen to public comment, not for discussion. And while we may direct staff to follow up, we won't respond to your comments at this time. Each council member is available to meet with you. I've met with individuals today, as a matter of fact, and we welcome those conversations. You may reach out to us via email 311 or just the direct meeting request form. So now that I've said all these things, now is the time for Public Speaks Out. And I'll start off by calling on our clerk to read any written comments and call on any registered speakers.
We've received 5 written comments. These comments have been emailed to council prior to the meeting, provided to council when they arrived, and also attached to the online agenda for accessibility. We have 2 registered speakers. Our first registered speaker is Philip Katros.
Hello, my name is Phil Kotros. I'm a longtime resident of Cary. Thank you, Council, for allowing me the opportunity to speak out. This is actually the second time that I'm going to speak to you on this topic, which is about merit pay for the town of Cary staff. I spoke here last year during the budget process, and I asked you to consider maintaining the 5% merit budget that the former town manager had proposed cutting as a way of helping to balance that year's fiscal budget. My message then had three main points. Number one, cutting the merit budget is never going to be enough to solve the town's budget challenges. I believe Cary is going to face these for several years due to a combination of inflation, slower growth, and aging infrastructure, among others. Number two, as someone who's had the distinct pleasure of volunteering and working with staff from numerous departments, I believe that Cary has the best of the best, who perform well beyond the norm. Anyone who drove the roads from Cary to any neighboring city or town during the winter weather, or anyone who interacted with 311, who worked extra weekend and evening hours, saw two very recent examples of why our town staff is the best. In a high-performing and a lean staffing environment, one in which Cary has the lowest number of full-time employees per 1,000 residents in any municipality in Wake County, these cuts are dangerous. They spur, or they may spur, well-trained top-tier staff in our town to leave for other neighboring municipalities, some who are experiencing now much higher growth rates and have significantly higher property tax rates, which would enable them to drive employee acquisition away from the town of Cary. Unfortunately, the budget for this year was passed with the aforementioned reduced merit budget for town of Cary staff. But I looked at this as an opportunity to come back here again during budget process and try to persuade you once more. So fast forward, and I was very pleasantly surprised to see that our interim town manager will be making a proposal, or at least I hope he's still planning to make that proposal, to bring the current year's merit budget back to 5%, consistent with years past. I applaud him for taking that action. You all as council have to decide if the various shifts in the funding that are proposed in order to bring that budget back to where I believe it should be are the right ones. I haven't studied that. I don't have an opinion on that part. But having watched the increased scrutiny that you all are rightfully given to proposed expenses, I suspect that you have or will drive that action with that proposal as well. My ask is simple. Regardless of how you get there, particularly for non-executive staff who are likely the ones most impacted by the current cut. The dedicated staff of the town of Cary are in many ways what make this place great. Let's keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next registered speaker is Thomas Pavlik.
So I'd like to speak about the financial malfeasance in the news in Cary. I'm going to start out by saying we can't blame everything on Sean Stiegel. On December 9th, WRAL News quoted Lori Bush saying, "I also want to state clearly that there is no connection between the tuition miscommunications I have described and the questions many of you understandably have about the town manager's leave." But WRAL later reported that the questions revolving around Sean Stiegel's actions began from a public information request for emails regarding the $37,000 for Lori Bush's master's degree, among other things. So actually, because of Lori's actions, that's how this financial malfeasance came to light. And I would actually like to know why the town council has not exercised their right to replace Lori as mayor pro tempore. I was also surprised to learn recently that Mayor Weinbrecht was being paid under a contract by a local engineering firm, a firm that does millions of dollars of work for the town of Cary, which is competitively procured, and also works for private developers who need approvals from the town for their projects, including rezoning, permitting, site plans, and traffic studies. By the way, I noticed in the mayor's recent State of Cary address, his former firm was prominently shown in one of his slides. The mayor was at the same conference in Texas as Sean Stiegel. He says at the expense of his engineering firm, where Sean misused his spending account, yet the mayor says he knows nothing about that. These things that I'm talking about are clearly a conflict of interest. So I will conclude by saying that I'm not old enough to be the father of either one of you or any of you, but I am a father, and so I'm going to give you some fatherly advice, same thing that I would give to my own kids. Number one, you should write a memo about everything that went wrong and how this situation can be prevented in the future. And number two, you need to resign.
Next speaker, please.
No additional registered speakers.
If you are here and would like to speak at Public Speaks Out, now is your opportunity. Can you move to your left, please? Thank you.
Good evening, Emanuela Presser. I've been here before. I'm here to talk again about the lack of accountability and the toxic environment that this town has created and is ongoing. I have been defined as an angry woman, and there have been false calls to civility by our mayor, when in reality he is trying to avoid the accountability. The last gentleman has spoken to a lot of that. I'm here to talk about something that has to do with accountability. In the past few weeks, I, myself, and others have brought to your attention what happens with the town of Cary Theater, the Cary Theater, which is owned and operated by the town of Cary. I was told that the town of Cary follows the master plan and that the single employee who makes all the decisions for this theater is being supervised. This is an employee who has shown in the past a shocking lack of common sense, a shocking lack of good taste. She was behind, in 2022, a show that never happened. It was a drag queen story hour that was supposed to be family-friendly with people with stage names that were absolutely vulgar. And there was a public outcry. I was part of that. And we foiled it. It never happened. Recently, your employee has decided to show a movie, which is a blood libel against Jews. I have brought that to your attention, and I was told you follow the master plan. Well, I have proven you do not follow the master plan. The master plan is simply a fig leaf, something that you use as a paper shield. This employee has made the decision herself. The reason why we, as Jews, are concerned about the movie is because we know history. Just not too long ago, in 2020, a similar child died in Gaza. His name was Mohammed al-Dura. The media, the Western media, portrayed him as being killed by the IDF. Long story short, it was the catalyst for the second intifada. Osama bin Laden spoke about Mohammed al-Dura as a justification for 9/11, a terrible terrorist attack against our country that costed us thousands of lives of our citizens. Was a spark for wars. And then we found out that the Western media had lied. They had edited the video. The child lived. They never showed that. But it cost us human lives, not just Jewish lives. And when we bring to your attention a movie that similarly is possibly the spark, the catalyst for violence, when there have already been Jews killed on this soil recently, when there are being calls in our town for global intifada, and you dismiss it as...
I'm sorry, your time is expired.
Sir, I am not done. I have...
I'm sorry, your time has expired. You need to
No,
step away.
as a matter of fact, I still have a few seconds.
You have no time left. I'm sorry. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Members of the Town Council, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Overton, my name is Elliot Tardif, Cary resident since 2014, and it's a privilege to speak with you again. I have 2 orders of business to bring before this dais to ask for your consideration and action. First, that town leadership and staff work to improve pedestrian safety at the intersection of Kildare Farm Road and Kilmaine Road, which is heavily trafficked by both vehicles and pedestrians alike. There's 2 Go Cary bus stops on this part of Kildare, one on either side of Kilmaine. Nearby businesses, some of whose staff walk or take public transportation to and from, as well as a daycare and a church. Yet, unlike the Maynard and Kildare intersection a few hundred yards up the way, there is only one marked pedestrian crosswalk and no pedestrian crossing lights to speak of. I worry this is an accident waiting to happen. Please be proactive and fix this now. Second, in regards to the $250,000 agreed to be spent by the town in the last meeting, number 1, all invoices from the outside firm investigating matters involving the former town manager et al. Be made a matter of public record if they aren't already. The $150,000 was stated as a payment of services to come. So what's been spent already? My fellow taxpayers and I deserve to know what this is costing us. Number 2, the $100,000 agreed to be spent by the council for an employee engagement survey needs to be rethought, and broader issues you raised need to be addressed. To be crystal clear, I want this town staff to be heard and they in the town to be better off for it. I say this as a former employee of the state, whose agency also, quoting from your last meeting, did a lot with a very lean workforce, close quote, but whose department did, and to my understanding still does, annual employee engagement surveys, drawn up, administered, and findings summarized to senior management and staff all in-house, with no additional expenditure to outside firms as was agreed here. If I heard correctly, you say the communications section is too understaffed to carry this out, yet, quote, there's been a hiring freeze, close quote. You say you want to spend money to drive participation, but you state staff, quote, is really great at responding to surveys because they've done it before, close quote. You want this quote-unquote health check, and quote, you need this data now, close quote, but I see a data that seems content with urgency at taxpayer expense while kicking the can down the road rather than fixing what's wrong. Do right by everybody. Fix the issues at hand while instituting a regular survey schedule as policy so staff have a permanent certainty of being heard and in a way that's responsible by taxpayers too. That's a better record to have. Thank you for your time.
Next speaker for Public Speaks Out.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am Renee Miller, and my concern today is the proposed increase to the merit budget proposed in tonight's discussion item. There are a few things I'd like for you to consider as you are reviewing this matter. The first is the reasons that employees leave. When employers ask this question, it's usually answered as pay. But when outside surveyors ask this question, pay is typically 5th or 6th on the list. This has held true for the 30 years that I have been certified as a senior professional in human resources. So I question whether an increase will actually have the effect expected. Secondly, I was pleased very late this afternoon to read that Cary has a policy in place that suggests that executive staff be exempt from this merit pool. During that first budget hearing last year, Mr. Cotros, who spoke earlier, suggested that this might be limited to line and lower management, and I agree. By spelling this out more clearly through your policies and citing those for the public, I believe you can demonstrate transparency, and we can see that you can make adjustments to ensure that we continue responsible spending in this area. I believe citizens support this policy and are especially interested in recognizing the excellent work of our staff. Finally, I ask you to consider the tax implications of making this move. The grand total of this project is $2,815,000, and that sounds insignificant when you think about Cary's $510 million budget. By moving money from one pot to another, there's no immediate tax implication. But the base payroll will change as you consider the fiscal year 2027 budget. The current published budget and my notes from last year's process indicate that 1% per mil equals approximately $5.3 million in revenue. So the effect could be an additional 1/2 cent per mil needed to cover this cost in fiscal year 2027. And that's before any merit increase is allotted for next year. I ask that you keep in mind that most Cary citizens who work for private employers haven't had a merit increase above 2% for years. And those on fixed incomes have had some recent years with no adjustment at all. Council should hold the line for now at 3% and limit any increase adopted now to frontline employees and then review further increases as part of the fiscal year 2027 process.
Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, Madam Clerk. I stand before you with deep humility and great gratitude for the Ramadan proclamation that we received at the beginning of this meeting. I want to thank Councilman Banso for her leadership on that. 28 days ago, I stood before you and I had some remarks that was covered by multiple media outlets. I stand here with an acute sense of the power of words and the impact that they have and the different perspectives that words can change. I was here the last meeting for the entirety of this meeting. I can't do that now because y'all have y'all little niece there that doesn't have a 2-hour delay tomorrow. So I have to leave shortly after this. I will be balanced and just in my statements. I have been grilling you all, if you want to say that, but I'm somebody who is somebody of justice and fairness. And when I was here last meeting, I watched specifically the Farrell Road zoning. And each and every one of you, starting with the mayor, you listened with an attentive ear. You were empathetic to our residents that dealt with the Farrell Road zoning. And it is my hope that that same humanity that you showed when it's time for you to vote, even though you haven't voted on it yet, that you do not allow ambitious developers to come in on this private property, and to certain families it is sacred property, to move in and create all of the problems that was mentioned by the residents before. I hope that when the cameras is off that takes place. But with that being said, I was profoundly impressed by hope that Cary has with each and every one of you. And I know we don't mention names, but I was very impressed with the interim town manager, Mr. Overton, his knowledge, his depth, the way he understood it, and everyone. I was very impressed with that. So I have to be just and say I was proud of that. But I also want to say in closing, this community is still expecting transparency and accountability. And hopefully we can get that. I yield my time.
Next speaker for public speaks out. Anyone else for public speaks out? Seeing no one, I'll close public speaks out. We now move to item 4 on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. Please keep in mind, one motion approves all of these items. And for those watching on video or streaming, I'll take a moment to read these items. On the consent agenda, we have minutes, Walnut Street parking deck gravel lot improvements amendment proposal, adjustment to the adopted meeting schedule. I know we have a council member that would like to speak to one of these, but I would entertain a motion to I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move that we approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. I know we moved to discussion. I was reading notes while I paused, and I know Ms. Wong wanted to speak to one of the issues.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to begin by thanking the residents who reached out to the council regarding the Walnut Street parking lot item, asked that we recap the entire process, and we listen to our people's voices, and we value your input. Transparency is important to us. That's why I want to take a moment to walk through everything. Beginning in October 2023, while the town was repairing the Walnut Street parking deck, we constructed a temporary gravel lot to support overflow parking and construction vehicles. This property is owned by Academy Park Commercial LLC, and the lot was always intended to be temporary until the property owner begins construction on its project. So that means we're using someone else's property for parking. Under the Downtown Development Project Agreement approved by the council on June 26, 2025, the town is permitted to continue using this gravel lot until construction on the new building begins, but only if we make certain visual and safety improvements, such as fencing and landscaping. If we decided not to make those improvements, the agreement requires that the lot be removed and returned to the grass by September 11, 2026. Then on January 8th, the council was presented with two options. One is for $125,000 for the improvement to the gravel lot. The other is $70,000 to remove the gravel lot and return to grass. At that time, the consensus was that maintaining the parking lot because it would benefit our citizens. However, our Councilwoman Kong Johnson raised important questions about the cost, which prompted us to take another look. And then we asked the staff to revisit the proposal and ensure that any improvements still meet ADA requirements and find a more cost-effective solution. Our staff did exactly that. They brought back a significant improved option, which is $75,000 for the necessary upgrades. And this is $5,000 more than returning the lot to grass. And it preserves much-needed parking for residents and businesses and visitors. Please let me know if anything I have stated is incorrect. And I would love to share that. I drive to the downtown every day. I saw the parking lot is always full, which is 100% is using.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. I would just add to that, and this is just my point of view. I think staff originally thought, because the worst-case scenario, it's years before something would be built there, that they were treating it sort of as semi-permanent, and we would build to the Cary standards, and that's why we got the 125 proposal. And council said, you know what, it's temporary, but it's permanent, so yeah, let's move more toward the temporary and spend less. And that's what happened. It's not that staff just threw out a number that was crazy. They were meeting our standards, so just wanted to point that out. So thank you for bringing that back.
Thank you for.
Any other comments? We have a motion on the table. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. There are no public hearings, so we now move to discussion. We have fiscal year 2026 budget adjustment. Budget again? No. Budget adjustment to restore funding to the employee merit program. Our interim town manager, Russ Overton, will present the item, and council may take action. Mr. Overton.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and Council. As we now know, this year, our merit program was underfunded compared to prior years. Tonight, I would detail a request to restore funding to our employee merit program to match the rate of the prior budget year, FY 2025, at 5%. It's fitting that tonight we recognize the efforts of our staff that went above and beyond to work the last 2 weekends for the winter storms. Holding true to our statement of values that employees are our most important resource and part of really Cary's DNA in having a high-performing workforce who deliver exceptional services to our citizens, so much so that 66% of our general fund expenditures are for personnel. Staffing was not added in the last two budgets, and during the current year budget, we also now know that 29 positions were actually unfunded, further lowering our staff-to-citizen ratio, which are lower than many in the state, and further straining resources as the community continues to grow. Cary utilizes a pay-for-performance policy that rewards the highest-performing staff. This policy has served us well, and at the same time hasn't been evaluated in over 10 years. So also part of this, I've asked for a group of staff to reevaluate this policy and determine if any changes are recommended, which if they are, then would come back to council for review prior to the end of this fiscal year. In order to fund this merit increase, staff is proposing to reallocate existing appropriated funding in the current year's budget. To be clear, that means no additional taxes, fees, or other new appropriations to the current adopted FY 2026 budget. And now that we're just past the midpoint of this budget year, we are well positioned to assess where we can reallocate funding with the least disruption to operation and services to fully fund our merit program. Again, this is a reallocation to existing resources. And in that, and as the table shows, $500,000 is proposed to come from contracted services from the town manager's office, $450,000 from your mid-year appropriation monies, traveling training at $250,000 reduction in or reallocation in the town manager's office, historic preservation of a study that is not planned to be performed this year of $200,000. Contracted services in parks and recreation reallocation of $200,000, solid waste contracted services reallocation of $150,000, and a utility fund remote water infrastructure division reallocation of $280,000, and parts funding from the fleet department at $35,000, as well as a $750,000 transfer to the general fund from the utility fund. In detailing, let's see, oops, I missed a slide. Well, I'll say this. This is a summary of your mid-year appropriations to date, and it includes the actions you just took for the Walnut Street gravel parking lot, as well as what would be the merit adjustments. So I just want to keep this chart going till we show the balance of the mid-year appropriation funding that was $1 million, and you currently have a $185,000 balance. So with that, staff recommends that the council recognize and appropriate $750,000 of miscellaneous utility revenue to cover an additional indirect cost reimbursement from the utility fund to the general fund, and additionally, that council reallocate $1.7 million from the general fund, as earlier discussed, and $280,000 from the utility fund and $35,000 from the fleet fund to increase the fiscal year 2026 pay for performance employee compensation program budget from an average 3% to a 5% award. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Overton. I'll start off by saying that Cary staff is the best of the best, and I'll stand up to anybody anywhere and tell them that. I honestly believe that. And I worked for a man for 29 years, and he had a saying, my biggest asset walks out the door every day at 5 o'clock. And that's what I think about the Cary staff. They go home every day. That's Cary's biggest asset. That's why we're the best of the best. Just to give you a clue, Cary gets recognized annually each year. This year, there are 40 awards that I talk about in the State of Cary address. That's not from the people sitting at the table. That's because of our staff. That's because they're that good. And if we want to keep the best of the best, we've got to step up and take care of the best of the best. Now, I can also tell you from a business perspective, when you have high turnover rate and less retention, your onboarding time costs money. And you're actually losing money by spending less if there's a lot of turnover. So it's important for retention. And I think our retention is low for the field that government work. We're pretty low. And so to have the best of the best and take care of them just makes sense. And if you go, I don't know, we're not really efficient by doing that, well, Cary, somebody mentioned it earlier, has less than 7 employees per 1,000 residents. There's nobody around us that comes close to that. I think Raleigh's maybe 7.5. But so they're doing a lot with less. And now with the extra work pounded on them by the public records requests, it's just unreal, and the storms they have to deal with. So to me, this is a no-brainer, especially when you're talking about reallocation of funds. And some of those things will disappear, but a lot of those things will come up in next year's budget discussions. Right. So we'll discuss that again. But I was really impressed by a total of $750,000 coming from the manager's office. That was very impressive to me. It's like putting your money where your mouth is. If you believe in your employees, you're going to step up and do that. And so I love that part of the presentation and that part of how do we pay for this. But to me, it's a no-brainer that if you're going to have the best of the best, you got to take care of the best of the best. And Cary has the best of the best. So I said a lot.
You said it well. I do have some strong opinions here of myself, really. If I could share next, I'd appreciate that, because when things started going awry for this council and our staff in November, one of the, we were reacting to a lot of very negative information coming at us very quickly. But I've got to thank Russ Overton for his leadership, and others, especially in the town manager's office, because while we were trying to, we're kind of caught on our back foot sometimes as far as like, what do we do first and whatever. So we were really trying to get a handle on things. And he says, yeah, and we've got to, you guys made a mistake with the reduction in the merit pool. And as soon as he said it, I realized I made a very, very dumb mistake myself, because when we were told staff's on board and you can reduce it and everything's okay, I cannot blame that on bad information being given to me, because I know better. I got a cost of living raise last year. I got a handsome merit raise. I think at one point I came in saying, oh my God, I got a raise I didn't even ask for. And that is absolute, just such a lack of paying attention to what's going around me on my part. I want to personally apologize for staff for that. It shouldn't have taken what you said to make me see that of all the things that we were trying to do to keep our tax increase as low as humanly possible, touching staff pay shouldn't have been one of those things. And for that, I really do apologize. That being said, one of the things I ran on the first time, and then again this time, is affordability. And I feel very strongly that, especially, we'll call them rank and file. I've been rank and file most of my adult life. I absolutely know what it's like to have a car repair derail your entire financial health, or wondering, can I really afford this house anymore? Should I move in with my friend Amy? That kind of, this is not, 30 years ago for me. This is 15 years ago for me. So I do understand the struggles, and I think here in Cary, we have a new council, and I think we have an opportunity to revisit how we approach pay in general, because I believe that we should be paying every single one of our staff members a livable wage for Cary. That's my opinion. Actually, that's the hill I'll die on. No one can change my opinion on that. And I think that this is an opportunity for us to start moving in a direction where we can all feel really good about the fact that we are setting what I would call a very good example for other employers here in Cary. I have spoken to quite a few residents about this, and I've not had one person tell me, well, they make enough, it's fine, whatever. Everybody understands that affordability is incredibly problematic right now. I do understand that that has ongoing tax implications. I do read the budget. I do understand the piece of that pie that our staff salaries takes up on our budget, and I'm okay with that. For me, it's a values judgment, and for me, again, I won't make the same mistake twice on this one. I'll make all kinds of mistakes, but this is not a mistake I'll make again. And I just wanted to just go on record with, how I really see the entire topic of how we pay our staff, and culturally I would love to be able to get the ball rolling on that being a really core piece of the culture as we reexamine absolutely everything here in the town of Cary.
So I want to piggyback on that, and I'll share some more information on what Councilwoman Con Johnson said and give her some credit, but she's not giving it to herself. But this conversation kind of, and I want everybody to have context about this. This conversation was really between council during one-on-one discussions and Sean Stiegel, who was our town manager back then. And the conversation was, how do we have a balancing act? How do we make sure that the taxes are not, we don't have to go 2 or 3 cents up and give enough merit increase to the staff so that, we can balance both sides well. With the given information that we had at that time, it was proposed that from 5% to 3% could be fine. He has spoken to the staff members, and for this year, if we can stabilize things, that would be better. And then in future, we can start, identifying areas for opportunities where we can cut down cost and we can find those, the money and, reallocate funds. I was told, and I don't know, I didn't confirm with any one of you, but Councilwoman Con Johnson and especially Councilwoman Craig were the two who were very hesitant with this move. And Harold. Mayor Harold. And I think they were very hesitant with this move because especially I remember having conversation about Councilwoman Craig, and she kept saying that, my heart does not agree to this. And, are you okay with if the staff is fine and if it is okay with just 3%, but, please let them know that, and I'm quoting you, I'm sorry, but this is what I know about your conversation. And I felt that there was a genuine, there was some genuineness, like everybody cared. We did care about the staff, and we did care about how the tax implication is going to be on the residents because of the affordability factor. So we were torn on both sides. And when the conversation kind of, a lot of things started coming out, and there was so much information out there, we sat down with Russ, and who actually gave us the true picture of where the financials are, and we started talking about the merit increase. We were supposed to bring this conversation in December, or maybe January?
December 1st, and then we moved it to January.
Yeah, but then I said, let's slow this down, slow the process down, and let's identify where the funds are going to be reallocated. And that way, the council will have enough time to ask questions and think through everything without hasting into any decision. So I want the staff to know that you're very appreciated. Everything that you do is, like Mayor said, we are very proud of that we are part of this organization. But we also want the residents to know that we care, and we were very, very careful about how to move forward, but we had only very limited information to work with. So I think with the given information that we have today, and I know someone mentioned about, how private corporation works, where people don't have merit increase, but private is very different from public sector. And the kind of work and the hours that public service, town staff puts in is far more than private. So the expectations are different, life is different, and the work is very cut out different. I can say this because I worked in private sector pretty much all my life. I do feel that, looking at how you manage the budget, Russ, commendable, because you cared for the people who work for you. And I have to say that we gave him hard time about where the funds are going to be from, how we're going to manage this, but he made it happen. Thanks. And thank you for being that person, because that's exactly what is needed today. I understand a lot of residents have their hesitation, and a lot of you probably are thinking, what are we doing? But this is intentional. There was a lot of thought that went into this. And at this point, we really need to move forward with a lot of care. And I know that, Russ, you have put that emotion and your heart into it to make this happen for the staff. So thank you for your leadership.
Thank y'all.
I also would love to weigh in. So I believe our public sector servants deserve this merit increase, and I also want to explain why. So first off, national surveys have already shown that public servants make about 15 to 20% less than their private sector comparisons. So they're already have a smaller salary base. But that comparable private sector workers, they have the same education and experience, and they're getting more money. So asking our public servants to accept a reduced or stagnant merit increase on top of that already deepens the pay penalty that they have. Now, let's all be honest, public servants do it for the passion, but they also still have to have a livable wage, and we want them to be able to afford to live in the community in which they provide so many services. And merit pay is just one of the tools that we have to recognize strong performance and reward people like all of the best, as you say, who go above and beyond and we want to keep those experienced professionals here and keep them from being pulled away to higher paying private employers. But for me, and more importantly, this adjustment is about righting a wrong. As you probably can tell, there was a miscommunication between what we understood staff's recommendation was and what staff believed our recommendation was. Council previously acted under information that didn't reflect staff's recommendation or the realities of what the labor market really are. And our employees shouldn't bear the consequences of that miscommunication. Restoring the merit pay increase really corrects that earlier decision. And I'm glad our group conversations have brought that back. And it also honors the commitment that we intend, that we say every day at this day, it's about the best of the best. It sends a clear message to our employees that when we see something is wrong and unfair, we fix it in the open and on the record, right? So I absolutely support where we are with this staff recommendation.
Other comments?
I know we're being very repetitive at this point.
Okay.
This absolutely warrants being repetitive because staff needs to hear from every one of us our thoughts on this. I'm not going to speak for everybody because I don't know how everybody's voting. I hear the comments, but for me personally, you need to hear that I made a mistake. And to reiterate what's been said, I believe it's safe to say others have said they, but due to miscommunication is where we landed here. As someone who works in a profession that has absolutely not been adequately compensated for their professionalism and everything they give to the community, I knew better. As Sarika said, I knew it in my gut, and I didn't question it enough. I absolutely should have gone to staff. And I mean, I remember hearing the recommendation on a one-on-one and then at another time, and literally, I'm sure my mouth must have dropped open. And I should have done better. And as has been stated, we have to, in my opinion, we have to correct the mistake that we made. And at a time when our auditor is suggesting that we consider anti-retaliation protections, whistleblowing, protections, I think we can understand how this miscommunication came to be, and now it's time to take action. I also want to say that it is unfortunate that a lot of people in the community are not getting merit increases. But that doesn't mean that we act in the same way. It means that we step up and we lead. I'm happy overall that our theme of the evening seems to be that there's a lot to be reevaluated for the future in all of our policies. And also wanted to point out that it's written in the staff report, but in case everybody watching hasn't read all of the staff reports and everything, that these reallocation of funds that we're looking at here there's not a lack of support for particular programs or whatever. For example, historic preservation is listed in here. As soon as I saw it, I said, I'm not going to make a mistake that I did prior. I went straight to my board and said, there's been some discussion about possibly taking $200,000 out of the historic preservation fund for the master plan. We had a conversation with the community board and the Historical Society, Friends of Paige Walker, just to make sure everybody understands so that they're not listening to a meeting and saying, oh my goodness, like you're just taking out money. And so that it's clearly written in here that the intention is in the future to ask for that money back again. This is a year where we're not ready to use that money. So it's an appropriate action. And I'm sure there's similar stories for other areas. So I obviously had a lot to say tonight. But this is an opportunity to do something that we should have done last year.
Any other thoughts?
I'd like to commend my colleagues who made this previous decision and now feel that you have an opportunity to right a wrong, and you've spoken so eloquently about standing up to do the right thing, so thank you for that. I also hold our staff in highest esteem, so I think we have consensus there. I think it could be natural at this time of increased scrutiny for residents to say, is this really the time to be rewarding employees? And I think in one regard, what has happened with our town manager isn't pertinent in that, this was a previous decision. This is restoring our merit pay as it had been. But in some ways, I think it is especially relevant that at this time of our employees working under some duress, and I think it's fair to say even before our employee survey, anecdotally, we can hear of low morale, that this is a way for us to publicly and literally put our money where our mouth is to show our appreciation for the staff, especially during such a difficult moment. I also want to say, for the benefit of residents listening, we've had robust conversations about how to do this as fairly as possible, even looking at other ways to compensate employees at this moment. And we landed on this decision because this is looking back retroactively, that it makes the most sense to use the current rubric we already have in place, which, Russ, I think it's fair to say is fairly complicated. It's not easy to distill exactly who gets compensated, how much, in which ways. And so for now, we were going to use that existing rubric to, as Mayor Pro Tem said, right this wrong. But I appreciate in your presentation you noting that this is yet another opportunity for us to reevaluate going forward. So this is sort of looking backward, and so we're going to use the best tool at our disposal now and have an opportunity to perhaps refine that tool going forward.
Turn.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone, for your input. It's really a moving moment. I would love to share my personal experience because I'm a small business owner, and if a employee is not satisfied with their salary, they would just come to us and say, I want a raise. But as far as I know, you never received that message before, right? So that means our staff is pretty like under the hat of the A+ team or the best of the best, so they have the passion to serve our community to remain that reputation, even though they feel the pressure of the living cost is increasing. And especially, Russ, appreciate your 75,000 from your town manager's office, because I was thinking when I grew up, my mom doesn't have enough money. I would think, oh, I have to save some and spend on something. So you're like this feeling, oh, you feel our budget is tight and you don't want to spend more and just use your office money to benefit our staff, and appreciate that. And absolutely, I feel this is the merit program needs to be 5% and move forward, and appreciation for our staff hard work. And especially before last year, I was a citizen, and I feel whenever I talk to any staff, their face was always a smile, like the high standard of service. That makes me feel really lucky to live in Cary. Thank you so much.
I also want to acknowledge a few more people, Mayor. Dana Widmar, Susan, Scott, Ginny, for your leadership, because I know you have been the biggest advocate for the staff, and you all, your entire team, worked very hard in finding money from different buckets and trying to come up with a perfect case scenario for us. Thank you so much for putting in all these hours.
Thank you. Are we ready for a motion?
Motion.
You want that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, I'll try.
No.
How about you
I'm
help
going
me?
to. Go ahead.
Okay.
You got this.
Laura is sitting next to me. That's very, I'm
Sorry,
scared. No, you're good. So I'll put the motion to go by staff recommendation that council recognize and appropriate $750,000 of miscellaneous utility revenue to cover an additional indirect cost reimbursement from the utility fund to the general fund. Additionally, that council reallocate 1.75 million from the general fund, $280,000 from the utility fund, and $35,000 from the fleet fund to increase the fiscal year 2026 pay for performance employee compensation program budget from an average 3% to 5% award.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is unanimous. And
Thank you, council.
Thank you to you and your staff for everything that you do. All right, we need to go into closed session. Can I get a motion to go into closed session?
Pursuant to GS 143, 318, 11A, 1, 3, and 6, I move that we hold a closed session to consult with attorneys employed by and/or retained by the town in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorneys and the town, and to prevent the disclosure of information that is made privileged or confidential pursuant to the laws of the state and not considered a public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of the General Statutes, and to consider the qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness, conditions of employment or appointment, or conditions of initial employment of one or more individuals, public officers, or employees.
There's a motion
Second?
and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, and we now move into closed session. We'll reconvene our council meeting. We've concluded our business. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you.